is hosted by Tony Gapastione. Thanks for tuning in. It's showtime.
It is showtime. Welcome to episode 236. My name is Tony Gapastione, and I am the executive director and the founder of Brave Maker. You can find me on all the socials at my name, at Tony Gapastione. My website is tonygap.com. I get to live and breathe and do all things in Redwood City, California, which is the San Francisco Bay Area. My pronouns are he, him, his. And I am wearing a brown shirt that says Brave Maker with a fake faux green studio behind me with pink letters that says Brave Maker and a striped wall to my right. I am a Caucasian guy wearing yellow glasses. So over-branded a little bit today, but I get to talk to people in the entertainment and creative industry all over the country, sometimes the world, and I get to do this every Thursday, 3 p.m. Pacific time. So thank you so much for joining. I encourage you to follow me on the socials. Also, give a follow to our YouTube page at bravemaker.org on YouTube, where some of you might even be watching this for the live version or the replay. Subscribe and get people to follow along what we're doing, because we are educating, entertaining, and really creating community around justice, diversity, and inclusion. We love mental health. We love creating brave and safe spaces for people to tell their stories. And today is a great opportunity to do that, specifically when we talk about safety and bravery, because we're talking about intimacy on set with a intimacy choreographer and coordinator. I'm welcoming Brooke M. Haney to the podcast. Thank you, Brooke, for being here.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I am calling in from Queens in New York on Lenape land. I am sitting in front of a blurred background in a kind of, I would say a teal-ish aqua-colored shirt. I have long dark hair that is pulled back in a bun, and I am white, and my pronouns are they, she.
Thank you so much for being here. You are here today because my friend, colleague, and the director of community engagement at Brave Maker, Priscilla Lamb, met you at Sundance, and we got to go to Sundance in January. It's one of my most looked forward to times of the year. Been going since 2013. And you and Priscilla met, I think, in a workshop or somewhere, started talking about what you do. And Priscilla said, Tony, we have to get Brooke on the show and talk all things intimacy on set, because this is a very, very important subject. So let's just jump in and hear a little bit about how you got into the business in this way. Like, what's your origin story here?
First, I forgot to say thanks for having me, so thanks.
Yeah.
And it was great meeting Priscilla at Sundance. It was my first time at Sundance, and we met at a party, actually, and totally hit it off. She's just awesome. So I really appreciate her bringing me on here. My origin story, I started as an actor, and I often was cast in roles that are either involve some sort of physical intimacy or the character had a traumatic storyline. And so I very early in my acting career was thinking about the storytelling of touch, and also how do you go from being in a really uncomfortable place as an actor emotionally to then living a healthy life as far as your mental health later on. So I started doing research into what it takes to let an actor release a really heavy character. For example, I felt like in my training, and I have training all the way up through an MFA in acting, I was taught all these techniques and tools to get to a place of crying or grief or terror, and to let that go. So I started doing research into how do you let it go, and I created a warm down for actors that's called the Actors Warm Down. And then at the same time was thinking about this storytelling of touch, and I'm queer and came out late in life. So I realized that I'd been raised straight, and my ingestion of media had mostly been straight, or even if it were queer stories, often they were told by straight cis folks. And so I realized I needed to do some work if I wanted to have a queer lens and tell queer stories. So every day for a year, I read something, listened to a podcast, watched something, took a class all about sex, storytelling, BDSM and kink, queer stories. And then I started working mostly in the theater initially, working either teaching this active warm down, or I might be brought in as a consultant to work on a story of BDSM and kink. And eventually, a theater that I'd been working with for years said, "Hey, do you want to be our intimacy director again?" And I had to Google it. Dear Google, what's an intimacy director? And realized that the things I was doing, boundaries and consent, storytelling around touch, and closure, were the things that make up an intimacy professional. And, the rest is history. And I see you're throwing my book out. And April 1st, I came out with my first book called The Intimacy Coordinator's Guidebook, Specialties for Stage and Screen.
Such important work. I want to say I am giving you all your flowers, because this is something, for myself as an actor and a writer and a director, that I have come to know later in life as well, the need for protecting our actors, protecting our relationship as creatives. But I also really appreciate what you're talking about. And I still feel I have so much to learn with the warm down. And, I teach a lot of acting techniques, and we talk about the sense memory and substitution and, objectives, and how do you image, your character from your real life experience, all of those things. But there's not a lot of training around the self-care and the mental health of actors afterwards. So what are some of the things that you're discovering and that you're teaching, and kudos for you for writing this and getting this into book form, that you're passing on to creative and performers on the stage and TV and film?
Yeah. I think you're totally right about substitution and all these things. And the thing about it is, even if our brain knows this is play pretend, our body doesn't. When we put our body like into the positions of fear or terror or whatever, our body believes it's happening. And so for the actor's warm down, and I will say there's a lot of closure techniques that span from something you can do very quickly to something that takes a long time. And I would say the actor's warm down's on the longer time. I designed it to take 20 minutes because if your adrenaline's pumping and you're in fight or flight or freeze or fawn mode, physiologically it takes 20 minutes for that to disperse and for your body to regulate or regulate again. And so the actor's warm down it starts with like breath and like vocalizing, breathing out a lot of what you've been feeling. There's some yoga. So we're taking our body from the closed off place and opening it back up again. There's some meditation and breathing that allows you to think about the work that you've done and honor it, to note if there's things you could have done differently, to maybe check in with your artistic goals. There's some power poses, because we know that if you stand in a power pose for 2 full minutes, that will bring you to feel more confident, and a dance party at the end. So a lot of these are techniques that I didn't come up with personally. I put them together into a longer set of structured tools. But there's other kinds of ways that people do it. Lots of actors have their own ways. In fact, Nesta Cooper, I interviewed in the book, who's an actor from Canada, and she talks about like drawing a bath and playing some music. I think she has her own like little thing she does after every time she works on a difficult role. So actors can have anything they want. And probably some of your actors know like Tap In, Tap Out, which is created by Intimacy Directors International. That's very quick. It almost reminds me of saying action or cut, because it's like you just clap together and now we're our characters, and clap, now we're ourselves. But it's that physical recognizing of when which is which. And then theatrical intimacy education has a technique called de-rolling that talks about, it's a very intellectual technique. So I might say to you, Tony, as my character, I manipulated you and slapped you and tried to make you feel small. as Brooke, the actor, I followed my blocking, I said my lines, and I pursued my objectives. And then you would say back to me your response. And it's like recognizing that we as characters are different than we are as actors. So there's like lots of different techniques, but I do think it's important for us to start teaching it at the beginning levels of acting.
This is incredible. This is profound, and at the same time, really relatable. And I say this not in a reductive way, but it's simple to be able to pass this on to people. It's such powerful education that I'm going to start implementing right away into my class, because we do dance party. I'm a huge dance party person. In fact, one of the projects we're working on right now that I want to talk with you a little bit, I mentioned a little off mic. We are the Brave Maker Academy. We do these things just 4 times a year. They're acting intensives, meaning we create a short film within 6 weeks for whoever signs up. We write original characters and they get original arcs, and we train actors by actually making a film, which is kind of a rare thing for an acting class. You usually don't get to go and do something beginning to end in front of a camera, but I believe a lot of actors get great training in studio, but then they get to a set and they're like, oh my gosh, blocking and microphone and hair and makeup, and oh, I only get 1 take. Wait, what? I have to cry immediately, right? So we try to build these things in, but in this session specifically, it's called Strange Remedy, and we're dealing with childhood trauma. We're dealing with sexual assault. We're dealing with abandonment, and we're dealing with childhood bullying. And so these actors are bringing these scenes to life, and I'm really proud of what we're doing and where we're going. And 2 of the actors selected to explore nudity and intimacy on camera. I was like, okay, well, this is perfect. We're talking to an intimacy coordinator, and we got to really make sure that so we use the words consent a lot, even before we are in front of the camera. We're talking about, even in our scene work, we're talking about, is it okay if I touch you? Is it okay if I put my hand on your shoulder? Where are you comfortable me touching you? Where are you not? And I learned this kind of the hard way in a non simulated sexual intimacy way. I had a scene where I wrote between 2 actors where it was a little bit kind of silly, where the guy was supposed to pick the girl up and move her away because she was being annoying. And the actor told me, oh, I have a bad shoulder, I can't do this. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting. If I would have known that, I would have done that differently. So just being able as an actor to be able to advocate for yourself, it's so, so important. Yeah. So I just said a lot, but I would love for you to comment on what it looks like for actors in advocating for themselves. There's a lot more way being made for intimacy coordinators and requirements and stuff. But let's say an actor gets a role, or they're on set, or they read in the script something they're auditioning for. They see some intimacy, whether it's just light touch, or full-on sex simulation, whatever. What are some things actors could and should be doing to advocate for themselves for safety on set?
Tony, I love so much that you asked the question the way that you did. What can actors do to advocate for themselves? Because I think often people are like, okay, well, there's going to be an intimacy coordinator. That person's going to take care of me. And yes, we're going to do our best. But actually, a really important part of actor training right now needs to be figuring out what your boundaries are and knowing how to advocate for yourself. So working on it in class is such a valuable tool, because you don't have that high pressure stakes of there's a job on the line, I need to impress this producer, all of that. So I love that your actors are self-selecting into this in class. And what's really great, a great thing an actor can do now, because in the latest SAG contract, the language in the contract says that producers must make best efforts for the hiring of an intimacy coordinator for any scene involving simulated sex, nudity, or on request by actor of other scenes. So in your example, even if someone's just in a scene where there's light touch, they could request an intimacy coordinator, and the producer has to make best efforts to get one. So if for any reason an actor feels like they need help with an advocate, or they want help around the storytelling of the sex, because it is choreography as well, that's a great time to ask for an intimacy coordinator. But what you're talking about around consent is so important too. As an intimacy coordinator, I can't tell an actor what their boundaries are, because there's no way for me to know unless they tell me. So actors practicing and learning what are my limits and understanding that they can change from day to day or person to person, and that that's a good thing, because we're raised in such a society, especially in theater and film, to say yes to everything. Like, people please, we want to be easy to work with. But some of the coolest work I've done has been with actors who have had a no, who've had a boundary. And so then you have to re-choreograph it. Well, how can we tell this story within that boundary? And often the story ends up being even cooler, even more compelling, because I'm not just going to my bag of regular tricks, or the director's not just pulling from a thing they've seen or done before. We're having to like come up with, in the moment, something that will tell a story really well within a boundary. So yeah.
If you're watching live or on the replay, there is going to be some videos playing from Brooke's website. You could find at Brooke with an E, M Haney, HANEY.com, and see all of the shows and TV projects that she's been a part of, which is really cool. And you'll see a lot of these scenes that Brooke has been able to coordinate. It looks like you're seeing, even just like bare-chested men. You're seeing a man and a woman in a tub. All of these kind of sensitive scenes to be able to depict on camera. I really love, you have a lot of experience, so kudos and congratulations. Even the fact that you were at Sundance with a Sundance film. Well, let's talk about that. But so it sounds like you get contacted and actors are able to advocate for themselves, and a producer has to make the effort to get an intimacy coordinator on set if an actor requests it. What does it look like when you're working with an actor specifically? Like, is it like, hey, we're going to Zoom for an hour, you're going to tell me all the things, like you do an intake session? Can you talk a little bit about what an actor could expect when they meet with you?
Yeah, I think the expectations is sort of the best part. I remember when I was acting, the first film I got cast in when I moved to New York was a student film, like an NYU student film, in which there was a scene in an hour. And I remember being this young actor and thinking, what kind of shower scene is this going to be? What are the shots? What will it look like? How much of my body will show? And at the time, being very nervous to ask those questions. And the great thing about an intimacy coordinator is I'm going to meet with the director and the producers first. I'm going to find out what's their vision. What are the shots? How are we trying to tell this story? And so then I'll meet with the actor, and the actor has someone with no hiring or firing power who can then say, hey, here is what you can expect. Ask me all the questions. I will get you all the answers. And I'm going to get them in a like a matter of fact, this is my job to do sort of way that doesn't make you feel like you're being difficult to work with. It's just my job. I'm going to go back to the director and be like, oh, actually, we're curious about this particular shot. You say handheld. Is it going to move up the body? Is it going to move down the body? What's the story we're trying to tell? So that's the first thing. It's an intake, like you said, and it might last for an hour. If it's, one or two scenes, it might be shorter than an hour. It might last for, I might meet with them several times. If, for example, we're doing a feature film where there's many scenes throughout the film, but I'm looking to find out what are their boundaries, what are their ideas about scene, and giving them as much information as I can. And then I'm going to go back to whether it's the director, the costume and wardrobe, special effects, whatever other departments we're coordinating with, and get them answers or give those departments information so that on the day, things move as smoothly as possible. And then depending on the complexity of the scene, we might rehearse it before we are in person, or before the day, like on a different day, or we might rehearse it during director's rehearsal that morning. And I'm going to spend the day checking in with the actors, helping them create the choreography. And then I'm going to watch the monitor, one, for are we honoring their nudity rider? Like, am I making sure that nothing's showing that we didn't agree to? And two, how is the storytelling of touch going? So depending on how the director wants, I may come in and tell an actor, like, drop your shoulder. when you do that. I'm going to be able to see a little better the angle on your neck that way, or it's going to look a little more like you're leaning into it with your heart. Or I might say something like, bend your fingers a little. I'm gonna watch for like, when is the body lying? When does it look like you're following the choreography, but your body isn't telling the truth of the moment? And then we're just gonna work together to make it beautiful. And then afterward, I'll check in with the actors, see how they felt it went, and things like that.
Very cool. I like that you're using the word choreography. We're very familiar with the word blocking. Would you say choreography is being used more in the intimacy space because it's more of like the dance connection? Or just that's kind of a quick question of clarification I was wondering.
Yeah, I think it's depending on the style. It's either more like a dance or like a fight, and needs to be choreographed moment by moment.
Yeah, beautiful. I was in a production of Romeo and Juliet in college, and I played Romeo, and I had to be naked on stage in the bed with the actress who played Juliet. We had nothing like this. You know, I was just basically told, like, you have to get dressed on stage and show as much as you want. We'd like you to show your butt. I was like, okay, all right. So I kind of just had to do that. I really didn't think I had a choice, and I'm glad I did. I think it was fun and fine. But I just definitely remember feeling as if the director was maybe pushing for a little more, you know, for me to do, and having someone to chat through that would have been great. But also, you know, Romeo and Juliet, there's a lot of kissing going on, and I remember. Nobody really told me, and I was dating somebody else at the time, right? I was dating my girlfriend, you know, it was fairly new, and then she comes and watches me kiss another person, and it was just very interesting. But I remember not really knowing about, like, you know, this might be too much information, but you have to talk about this, like, where's your tongue go, and are we touching tongues? And I don't feel comfortable touching tongues, and how do we do that? And I just wish I had some. I still feel like I don't know, you know, if I were to do like an open mouth kiss, I would be so grateful to have somebody to talk through how do we choreograph this. So what a cool opportunity and work that you're doing, a great service to actors to feel good about their work, because nobody wants to feel gross, you know, with what they love.
I mean, I love that you said, I forget your exact words, but that like you were actually excited for the scene and you're glad you did it. And having more guidance might have been helpful. Because if what the director is saying to you is like, we'd like to see as much as possible, but they're not telling you, how do you do that in a way, like, let's say you've decided, okay, I'm willing to show the back of my pelvis, but none of the front. So how do we have you get up in a way and put on your clothes where it doesn't seem like you're hiding the front from the audience? It seems like you're naturally getting up and putting your clothes on while having your conversation with Juliet or whatever. So some of the choreography is about making it look natural, whatever the boundaries are. And some of it is just about doing what you're doing so that the actor can focus on the acting, not on how should I do this? Should my tongue go here or not? You know? Yeah, you want to be fully in the moment as the character, not thinking about where do I put my body parts.
You've got a ton of great resources, so we want to encourage you here, episode 236 of the Brave Maker podcast, to go and follow Brooke M. Haney on Instagram and look at all the resources she has. Buy her Intimacy Coordinator's Guidebook. This is really great, especially if you want to be an intimacy coordinator. This sounds like a perfect resource for you, but maybe you're also just your director. You need to know some of this language. I think it's great. I want to get this book. And there's also a whole page of resources at her website, brookemhaney.com/resources, where you can see all the SAG-AFTRA stuff, casting director's guides, all different things for queer performers, and boundaries and consent worksheet. It's like, oh my gosh, a really great opportunity for actors to get educated, something that I want to include this on our website to direct people to you, because I think it's such a really important resource, because actors, you know, let's just be honest, we're taken advantage of a lot of times, and we are exploited, and we become objectified in performing spaces. We are like we alluded to, we are so desperate to work and to perform because it's our passion, and we'll say yes most times to anything, and then we don't know what to do when we find we're in an awkward or uncomfortable situation. So we can all get better at doing this.
That boundary worksheet on my website would be a great thing if you're an actor listening or watching and you're like, I want to advocate for my boundaries, but I'm not sure what they are. It really is just a worksheet that you fill out that goes through different body parts and like, where are you willing to give and receive touch? Are you willing for it to be light or more rough? And it could be a thing to work through just on your own, just to think about where your boundaries might be, because in the moment when someone says, well, what are your boundaries? You might not be thinking body part by body part. So the worksheet is there to help actors kind of think it through body part by body part. And then it'll change depending on what you're working on, what the story is, but at least as a way to like let your brain kind of curl around the possibilities.
I want to ask you about the body quote you said earlier about, and I totally agree with this. Our bodies don't know that it's not real when we put ourselves in danger, when we put ourselves in intimacy or erotic situations, when we engage in fear. Can you just speak to that a little bit? Is that just kind of really more about the warm down stuff too? But I'm wondering, how do you handle, and there's these famous quotes, I think supposedly by Jack Nicholson, when he says something about, this might be, blunt, but it's out there, when he talked about an intimate scene with a partner and he says, I'm sorry if I get aroused and I'm sorry if I don't, like what are your thoughts around that kind of stuff as a performer, how it really impacts or affects our bodies in those moments?
Yeah. I mean, it isn't just about kinds of trauma. Yes, our bodies, we release pheromones, we get serotonin hits, all of that happens. I think one reason there's so many showmances is because the screenwriter or the playwright give you all the right words to say, and then the director gives you all the blocking to do, and it's so easy to fall in love with this perfect thing that's been set up for you. Plus, you're spending all of your time with these people in these very heightened situations. So it makes sense that that's a thing historically that happened. And especially at times when there wasn't always strict choreography, then like often a performance might grow. A 1 count kiss might be a 3 count kiss by opening night and a 7 count kiss on closing night, if we're talking theater, or by the last take, it's a 15 count kiss. And that there's problems for that storytelling wise, because that's about what the actors are feeling, not what the characters are doing. But also it does give our bodies information. Sarah Ruhl wrote a play called Stage Kiss, where she researched all of physiologically what happens to actors when they have intimate moments on stage, and she wrote a play about it. And I think it's fascinating the ways in which our bodies really believe what's happening. I mean, it's why outside-in acting works so well.
I think that's I would be so interested to read that or talk more about that, like the impact on actors. Sometimes I feel as if I've had so many relationships because of all my acting relationships that haven't been real, and just processing that I think is really interesting. And I don't know if there's anything out there, maybe it's more for therapy sessions, but my wife and I, when I've had to kiss somebody on screen, like you really have to talk that through. And how do we feel about that? How would you feel seeing that? And, I think couples who are in performing arts need more resources around that, like how to manage those real conversations in your daily life. Like I could imagine like there could be some cool worksheets, that someone could create for us out there, because that is a wild conversation to have. It could really mess with you.
Yeah, and I think that idea of you're partnered with somebody else who then has to watch you kiss someone else, or know that you're going to work to do that, knowing it's choreography rather than two people just going for it, makes it so much more about work and so much more helpful. But I also think those are important conversations to have with our partners. Yes, maybe with your therapist. I mean, I am a huge fan of a couples therapist. But yeah, it's okay to have boundaries around your own relationships as well, and how your work affects them. Absolutely.
Beautiful. Oh, I'd love to have you just kind of talk a little bit and brag on some of the amazing projects that you've got to be a part of. You were at Sundance with a film called Pony Boy. I saw that film. I also had River Gallo, the writer and star of that show, that film, when they had their short film years ago. So I think they were in, our early 20s, and we're in 236 right now. So you got to do some really cool things. I'd love to have you just talk a little bit about some of the projects, name drop some titles people should go watch so they could see the work that you've done.
Yeah, working on Ponyboy was such an honor. Ponyboy is the first feature film starring an out intersex actor playing an intersex character. And River has done such amazing work with their whole team to bring that to the screen. And I'm so honored to have been a small part of that. I was on an intimacy team with Ash Anderson, who was the lead intimacy coordinator on that project. And I did a few of the scenes and they did the rest. But it was such an honor to be a part of, and working with River was wonderful. Birder is a film that played in festivals this year and is about to get distribution that I'm really proud of. It's starring Michael Emery, written by Amnon Laurie and directed by Nate Dushku. Queer stories are my passion. In my book, I talk about specialties. That's one of my specialties. And what I loved about Birder was the way that Nate wanted to work together was with me as a choreographer. Like, very much, he wanted authentic representation of queerness. And this film these aren't real exact numbers, but it's like 90 pages and like 80 of them are intimacy or nudity. It takes place at a nudist campground, and it's a queer psychological thriller, or psychosexual thriller rather. And I think if that's your thing, it's beautiful. But it's for someone who really wants that kind. I mean, it's a lot of nudity and a lot of sex. But on the flip side, I've worked for CBS. I'm working on Elsbeth right now, which is network television. So it's, much more a kiss here, a kiss there. I worked on Harlem on Amazon Prime, and season 3 is about to come out. Grace Byers is interviewed in the book, and I think she is one of the most incredible actors. I think she's going to be a huge star. She's already a star. She takes a note like no one's business, and the stuff she has to say in the book is really great. Also, the director and writer and lead of Birder also interviewed in the book. And I saw you showed The Best Man earlier. I did a little bit of work on The Best Man with Chelsea Pace and Kaya Dunn, who are also intimacy coordinators on that. That was a fun project. That's Peacock's most screened show ever.
Cool.
And such an iconic cast. Oh my goodness. Amazing.
Well, very impressive resume. Congratulations on all your work. And I encourage any filmmakers out there to follow Brooke and hire Brooke and get Brooke on your set. And actors, advocate for yourself. If you are on a set and you don't have the support offered to you, refer Brooke to become the intimacy choreographer for your shoot. I think this is the way of the future, and it's exciting. And I know there's a lot of conversation around a lot of film and TV is going in this direction, and it's only for the betterment, I think, of the performing arts community. And it's very exciting to see this happen. And all these resources, again, thank you for putting them out there into the world. Thank you for creating them. A lot of them you're putting out on your site look like they're for free. So go download all of these things at brookemhaney.com. Anything else you want to say before we do our brave faves for the week?
I appreciate you bringing awareness to this. I think actors having an opportunity to learn what their rights are is so important. So I really appreciate you having me on the podcast. Thank you. Well, and I'm excited for this next section.
Yeah, right on. Well, I love filmmaking and storytelling, and that statement about whatever the story requires, whatever is best for the story, I think is one of the coolest things we could think about. And if it means, intimacy or simulating sex and all those kind of things, let's do it, but let's do it well. Let's not re-traumatize or traumatize anybody if we don't have to. So this is all part of that collaborative process. Again, go check out Brooke's website at brookemhaney.com and follow her on Instagram. And now it's time for our Brave Faves.
Brave Faves. TV shows, films, books, songs, technology, clothing, podcast, food, and more. These are a few of our favorite people, places, and things. Brave Faves.
All right. Well, my favorite thing of the week is something that has been out for, I think, almost 10 years, but I have been in this new, I don't know what you call it, like horror season of my life where I am just really digging the scary and the psychological. And I've been watching things that I haven't watched before. Like I just watched the Blair Witch Project like 2 weeks ago because I never watched it before ever in my life. And I think more and more, maybe I'm at a mature place in my life where I can handle it, or the real world is a lot scarier than these things, so it helps me escape. I don't know. But speaking of body and intimacy, there was a film that I remember hearing about a while back that I thought, oh, I'm going to go back and watch it, because I actually asked people on social media, what's the scariest film you ever saw? And so many people said It Follows. So I watched It Follows, and it did not disappoint. But what was most, I think, interesting to me was the conversation that I went and dug up all the articles, all the blogs, all the Reddit things, all the theories, fan theories about what It Follows is all about. And that was really interesting. And then I started looking into the director and the writer and the concepts that the writer maybe wasn't even aware of that were going to be communicated to audiences, and how it brought up sexual trauma and sexual assault and gave people opportunities to talk about it. So I really liked it. I actually liked more the conversation around it, not just as a topic that it gave me opportunity to talk about or think about, but as an artist, like, what am I saying with my work? And do I know really why I'm making things happen on the screen? Because what I discovered was a lot of the things that were on the screen weren't necessarily intended, but it had an impact, and you can't always control that. So that was just a very interesting deep dive for me. So if you like horror, if you can handle stuff like this and wouldn't be triggered, I definitely would recommend It Follows. And if you saw it, hit me up and let me know what you think and thought about it, because I'm definitely still processing it. All right, Brooke, what's your brave fave of the week?
Last night, I went and saw The Notebook, the musical on Broadway. I had never read the book. I had never seen the movie. But a previous student of mine was having her Broadway debut playing young Allie. Her name's Jordan Tyson. And I cried from the moment she walked on stage for the rest of the show. I thought the staging was absolutely beautiful. And it was very fun. The intimacy in that musical is done by Claire Warden, who was the very first intimacy director on Broadway. And the intimacy was so beautiful because it was stylized and yet still felt real. It almost felt like a dance, and yet it was very, very grounded and honest. And connected to that, for people who aren't in New York and can't go see it, the soundtrack just came out. And it just, as a teacher, Jordan has become a very dear friend, and I almost never think of her as a student anymore. But as a teacher, getting to watch someone's growth over many years and then see them on Broadway and then listen to them on original Broadway cast recording and thinking about, like, she sings the song, If This Is Love. It's so beautiful. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, every young actress is now going to try and sing that song for auditions. And it's just, it was such a beautiful thing. And around braveness, it's a story with a lot of vulnerability. And I was really lucky to see it, and it was beautiful. That was my fave of the week for sure.
Right on. It's so cool. I'm so jealous of the New York ability to just go see Broadway shows. I love it. Go support the arts, everybody, and support your friends who are in the arts. What a beautiful, that's why I think you probably appreciated it so much. Wow, you've never seen the movie, so you had no context, and you go and see your fellow student. I mean, that's just really cool. Brooke, this was really a treat to talk with you. thank you so much for giving us your time in New York, 3 hours behind us here, or ahead of us in California. I'm really hoping for much success for you. And I go to Sundance every year. So next year, I hope that I'll run into you at a party and maybe we'll find a way to connect again. Actually, in fact, stick around after the show. I would love to talk with you about one more thing. But thanks again so much for doing this. This was great.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Everybody else, thank you so much for watching. And as always, I say thank you to our donors and our partners. We have 45 people now that support this show and our nonprofit. Someone like Jacob and Kelly and Robin, that's my mom. They are one of our top tier givers to support the work that we're doing, paying for our rent, our insurance, our streaming platform, help us do our film festival, and hold events like our May 11th showcase, which we hope you will come to for our directors and actors. We have a taco truck happening in our parking lot. And then we have a acting intensive with Giovanni Espiritu, who is an actor and director from Los Angeles. Will be here in our studio for 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, May 18th and 19th. All this information is on our new and improved website, by the way. Check it out. Bravemaker.com is new and improved and refreshed. And then I also want you to know that we are starting a new thing, the Bravemaker Community Mastermind, which meets every Monday morning. And it's a Zoom. It's basically professional development, accountability, creative support. I'll be having special guests from New York to LA to meet with us to help us move our goals forward. And I'll just be there for mentoring and support and to help people actually take action and stop talking about it or dreaming about it, because we need to have dreams. We also need to take action too. So that starts on Monday, May 20th. If you want more information, email me, Tony@bravemaker.com. Thank you to our team, our producer, Amy Cohen, our intern and editor, Jessica Cohen, who takes the clips from the show and puts them on Instagram, to our audio editor and podcast editor, Barnell Amos, and our social media manager and producer, Carrie Alley. Can't do it without them. Can't do it without you. Thank you, everybody, for watching and participating. Please also, July 11th through the 14th, the Brave Maker Film Festival. There's a lot going on. Do not miss it. Make sure you follow us at bravemaker.org and all the places. And we hope to see you at our next event. Remember, brave stories change the world, and you are the story. We'll see you later. Bye, everyone.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at bravemaker.org. Like, subscribe, and share. To become a monthly donor, text the word BraveMaker to 44321 or go to bravemaker.com/donate. Thanks for tuning in.